Good.
All right, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
So I know you as Highlighter.
Yes.
I'm sure you also have a real name.
Well, so funny enough, were you there the first day, or when I got the name for F3?
No.
So it was the day before the Fabian hike or whatever that is around.
Yeah, Run Forest Run.
Yeah.
Yes, which is my favorite event.
Yeah. So I saw Woody and Dr. Evil there. They're walking, running, doing the course. I was walking with Jessica and my grandma's dog. And I'm like, hey, what are you guys doing? They're like, oh, we're setting up for like a men's run. I was like, oh, that sounds fun. And then they go past. I see more. Jessica's like, you can go ask them. And I'm like, oh, when is it? So and so. So I showed up. For the last, I think 11 years, my nickname has been Lightbulb because I wear a lot of neon things.
Yes.
So there was a guy on the rugby team that says, oh, there goes Lightbulb, because I was the only person that people could see at nighttime. And there was a lot worse names on the team. I'd always bought neon clothes since like late high school because I never bought my own clothes before. And I was like, okay, I want to try to create my own identity, but I'm cheap, so I'm going to shop in the clearance section. So it was Sports Authority when that was still around, Gander Mountain when that was still around. So anything neon, I was like, oh, this is different, but I can still get it on sale. So I got the nickname of Highlighter at F3, and I'm like, I'm never coming back to this place.
Oh, you're not. Of course, you're not supposed to like your nickname,
right? And that was the thing.
Yes,
I was like, this is going to be confusing. But like a third of the people at my wedding pretty much only knew me as Lightbulb. So it was in the CrossFit and rugby community, and then that's just who I hung out with for an extended period of time. So that's just what the nickname was.
So where'd you play rugby?
I played rugby for Fox Valley Maris. They're the Fox Valley area.
Wow.
I actually played with them last Thursday at an indoor practice. Wow. It was fun.
What a fun spectator sport.
Yes.
I was. My kids had a soccer match out there at
Campton or Jim O'Brien.
Yes, James O'Brien.
Yeah.
And there was a female team out there.
Yep.
And so they're right next to where my kid was playing, and I just kind of wandered over there and watched, and it was so fun to watch that sport. It's just it's the level of athleticism and just the ruggedness and just the badassness of what you guys do out there.
Yeah.
It's very impressive.
Yeah.
Now you need to have some bulk to play that game. Like I'd be picked up and literally thrown around as a little person, little guy, But
yeah, you would either be on the wing trying to run away from people, or just kick the ball and everybody gets close.
Yeah.
That means that they can't tackle you.
Yeah.
But if you do it too close to running into somebody, they'll still light you up because they're like, oh, it's continuation. Like I was about to get the guy anyways.
Because you're not big by rugby standards.
No. And so when I started playing, I had never done CrossFit in my life. I was coming from competitive table tennis because my girlfriend at the time was giving me shit.
So you've always liked to compete then?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm a big fan of sports.
Okay.
So I knew a guy on the team that he was always like, hey, come play rugby. He played in high school. I played a little soccer in college. And I'm like, oh, this looks like a fun sport. I'd like to play as many as I can. And I showed up, and they're like, you're kind of like a skinny fat. We don't really know what to do with you, but you can kick. All right, we'll put you on the outside. So, definitely not a big guy in rugby standards. As a wing, you don't really touch the ball too much unless it comes all the way outside and you got to make something happen.
Right.
You don't do a lot of tackling. There's a video out there somewhere, but it's not labeled correctly, so I'm very happy you can't find it. But it's me tackling a guy with my face, and I use tackle in the most lenient way possible because I hit him with my face, I fall on the ground, and you hear someone behind the camera say, medic.
Oh, man.
So on that one.
But you don't let that deter you. I mean, obviously, you still continue, you play and you get out there, you find your niche. I would say. So that lesson is something that I'm trying to teach my daughter.
Yeah.
So she's very tiny. She's 10, and she's probably the smallest girl on her soccer team.
Okay.
And probably the smallest girl on the field, when both teams are out there competing. And she sometimes gets down on herself, because it's a physical game.
Oh, yeah.
And so she'll get knocked down, but then she'll get right back up. And then she'll get after the ball. She covers a lot of ground. She's fast. She's pretty fearless. And she's got a lot of raw talent, and I think she'll really do well if she sticks with it. But there is that size thing that, that when you're slight in stature, I mean, I was, always one of the smallest people around my group of friends, but I never thought about it. It's funny. I never thought about it.
Really?
But I didn't play a lot of sport. I mean, I wrestled in high school, played football like up to like my freshman year. But with wrestling, there's a weight class.
Right.
Nobody cared that you were, 118
at practice. Do you wrestle in your weight class? Is there a bunch of other people? Or do you go up? Do you go down? What's practice?
So what I recall, this was a long time ago. I graduated in 1988.
Yeah.
So it was, the calisthenics and all the workout was together. But then you would wrestle people that were close to your size.
Yeah.
But they couldn't always make that work. You'd be they wouldn't throw you with a heavyweight at 118. But it's a controlled setting where you're working on the moves and the fundamentals, and you can pretty much do that with people that are in and around your weight.
Okay.
And with leverage, even some people who are bigger. But I mean, it didn't. But with wrestling, it didn't matter that you were a little, smaller, because they just plugged you to the weight you needed to be at.
Gotcha.
But with soccer or rugby, you really have to overcome that. And there are some instances where you're just not going to be the right size for the sport. There's that reality too.
Yeah.
I mean, there's only so many, Spud Webbs and Muggsy Bogues that come through the pike who are, just super exceptional.
Yeah.
So there is that where sometimes you have to tell your kid, hey, football is not going to be for you. You know what I mean? Yeah. Football might not be your sport, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Because there's plenty of things to do out there athletically where you can find ways to compete and excel. As somebody who's smaller person. So
for sure. For you, what was your earliest childhood memory?
My earliest childhood memory? Any memory?
Yeah.
Earliest childhood memory. That's a really good question. I think the one that stands out in my mind is my dad grew up in Batavia, born and raised there.
Okay.
His family was born and raised in Batavia. They're 100% Batavia.
Yeah.
True, red and gold blood. My dad played a ball there, and I'm digressing a little bit. So his mom, his dad passed away when he was in high school. His mom, my grandma, Hannah, lived on Main Street, west of town. Okay. Between like Jackson and Harrison kind of area there. And I remember being in her kitchen and just looking around. I think I was under the table and I was looking around, and there was just something about being in my grandma's house that imagery has always stayed in my mind.
Really?
And I was probably 3.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that house. And every time I drive by that house to this day, I always look over and go, "There's where Grandma lived."
Yeah.
Where my dad grew up.
More of a like, hey, that's kind of like where the Queen lives, or was it like positive, negative, or it's just like, hey, that's the thing?
I just remember it was just very very comforting.
Oh,
it was just like the memory is one of just being really cared for and taken care of.
Yeah.
Because I was a 3-year-old and I was being doted over. Yeah. By your grandma. You know what grandmas do. They take care of you.
I remember my grandma's house in Fox River Grove. It had kind of like a stale smell to it, but we always got Kit Kats. So I was like, hey, this is great.
Totally. Yeah, my grandma used to cut.
I'll go to grandma's.
It's so funny. It's always a food element with grandmas, it seems like, too. My grandma, for me, when I was 3, she would cut up bananas, slices, then she would sprinkle just some cane sugar on it.
Really? Okay.
And then put it on a paper plate. I just remember, my God, this is the best thing ever. Because it was something that you got to sprinkle sugar on. Anytime I was a kid, you got to sprinkle sugar on something. It was, delicious. So, I remember that. I wouldn't do that now. It's so funny. It's like I have no desire to eat bananas with sugar on it. Yeah. Because they're sweet enough to begin with.
Oh, for sure. My grandma growing up, when she stayed with us, she would walk down to the White Hen, because we lived on Spring and Prairie in Batavia.
Spring and Prairie.
The one with the half circle in front.
That's where you grew up? Yeah, so I grew up like right down the street from you. Yeah, I grew up on Franklin and Forest. Do you know where that is?
Is that by the Montgomerys?
So you know where the Hamlet Street Park is?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm like 2 blocks from the Hamlet Street Park. You take Franklin Street at dead ends at Forest. Okay. And Forest has 2 long cul-de-sacs going each way. We're on the right. Yeah. We're down by the railroad tracks.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So you were at Spring and
Prairie. So it's just 3 blocks away from, I guess, the old 7-Eleven now, but you just keep working.
Yeah, it was White Hen Pantry. Back in the day. Yeah. So Spring and Prairie.
Had a half circle in front, all glass.
So did you know the Macklemores?
I don't. I knew the Lockers. The Montgomerys.
The Bensons. There's the Gonzalez. Did you know the Malgosas?
Not ringing bells.
I'm trying to think. So what year did you graduate high school?
2009.
Okay. So
I want to say.
All right. How old are you?
33.
Okay.
Tough question.
Okay. So you're 33. Okay. All right. So this is like a generation later.
Yeah.
But there was still some of the same old timers lived there. Like my parents' neighbors bought the house at the corner of Spring and Delia.
Okay.
There's that brick house there that's right up against the tracks.
Yeah.
They bought that house, and my sister rented that house.
Okay.
And so how long did you live there? Up until when? Your parents still live there?
No, my mom just moved, I think, like 4 years ago.
Okay. So did you go to Louis White?
Yeah.
No, you didn't know shit. So did I.
Yeah. Well, it's funny enough.
Dude, what a small world. That is a trip.
Jessica's parents, they live 2 blocks from Louis White.
No kidding.
It's just like,
I used to walk to Louis White.
Yeah.
So I actually started going to the old Louis White, which was that big,
Is it's now a church? Or?
No, it's like they've done so many different things in that, but I'm not exactly sure what they do there now. I mean, I think there was like a piano repair place there for a while.
Oh, yeah.
Gotcha. I think Music Matters might be in there, maybe some kind of music lesson place.
Yeah.
But I started out, my grade school there.
Yeah.
Kindergarten. I think I went there through third grade.
Okay.
4th grade started at the new Louis White. I was like I christened that place when I was in 4th grade.
Yeah.
And used to walk there from we were at.
What would you say the schooling style was when you were at Louis White? Because I remember being there for a couple of years where we had gym class every day. No, that's fine. We had gym class pretty much every day. Then at some point they kind of got rid of gym class and more recesses and added more classes. And I was like, what is this? And with ADHD, I had a hard time focusing. But what was it like for you?
So it was, this was the late 70s, first part of the 80s. I remember there was plenty of rec time.
Okay.
We had gym and recess. Seemed like it was pretty lengthy. Everything seemed to be just your reading, writing, and arithmetic.
Mm-hmm.
There wasn't really anything outside that. There was nothing that. It was just really like pretty studious times. I don't know what things are like now, and I mean I do because my kids are at Davis School in St. Charles, but I think the difference is compared to what kids are doing now is that. They didn't ever force. I'm trying to remember how to put this tactfully. So, my kids are 10, and I feel like sometimes they're forced to kind of like take a political stance at 10 years old.
Really?
Yes,
that's wild.
I do.
I remember there was always like 1 or 2 teachers.
I didn't know shit about politics, nor did why would a 10-year-old care?
Yeah.
I mean, nowadays, 10-year-olds especially with like this real hostile political environment that this country has and in the world.
Yeah.
Kids are like, and when I say politics, I don't mean like, big government, small government.
Right.
I'm talking like, whether or not, like climate change. And,
really?
Should we be, our cow farts destroying the planet? Seriously, this is like this is like stuff that they're studying.
Really?
And
That's interesting.
And I see this and I'm like, Jesus, no wonder, kids have got like anxiety at 10 years old. It's like, because they actually think that that the sky is falling.
Yeah.
Hey, when I was 10 years old, it was literally reading, writing, and arithmetic. That was it.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe a little history.
Yeah.
And even the history was like ancient history.
Right.
We never learned about like Vietnam or anything. We learned about like what happened in like the Renaissance and stuff like that. It was like stuff that like was really uninteresting for young people.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because
history-wise,
the job I think of school is to prepare you for life. And you have to learn critical thinking skills. And the problem with telling a child how to think is they think that is fact and not really to question it. We had a teacher that he's like, hey, do you believe in socialized medicine? And he's like, okay, well, give me $100. And the rich kid in our class is like, okay, like I got $100 for you. And to that example, he was like, oh, see, socialism doesn't work. But we have socialized things like fire departments and things like that. He didn't give a nuanced reason on why our healthcare is good or bad, or it was a not good teaching. He didn't do a very good job of it. It wasn't a good teaching moment.
Yeah.
he just wanted to give his views, which I think really is not helpful to a lot of kids when they're in school, because even if you do believe that cow farts are affecting us this percentage, break out how you came to that decision, and I think that's perfectly fine to bring that up. But you got to be able to have opposing opinions.
Yes, and my question is at what age do you
right?
You know, at what age do you like I was getting a little irked, honestly, that my daughter kept coming home with these lessons that talked about how she was going to be eating bugs, and I'm like, look, you're not eating any fucking bugs. It ain't happening. And I said, ask your teacher if the rich people are going to be eating bugs. Seriously, because it's like, to suggest to a 10-year-old that they're doing something wrong because dad made steak for dinner was really kind of like, wait a minute, this is politics, because a lot of these types of ideologies are really kind of split down political lines, and to me they're just too young. And I'm not even saying I'm right. I'm just saying that I'm also 54 years old. It's okay that I discuss this with you. Yeah. My 10-year-old doesn't need to be discussing whether or not we need to be eating bugs and stop eating cows. It's too early for that.
I remember,
but I know what the argument would be. The argument would be, well, they're the younger generation. We've got they've got to be talking about this now. And it's like, yeah, I don't know if that's the MO. I think the MO is that, and I don't think that they're achieving what they're setting out to achieve by changing the climate, by convincing kids that eating bugs is the way to get there. I think what they're doing is it's more of an indoctrination, really. Yeah. It's because, like you said, what's the data? Where's the nuance? Yeah. It's such an argumentative topic for a 10-year-old especially.
We can go big tinfoil hat and be like, hey, if we go look at the initiatives as far as climate and things of that nature, the recycling push, we all had those not class recesses. What is a meeting in the cafeteria? What is that called?
Assemblies. Yes, we'd have an assembly. Right.
So you'd have an assembly. Yeah. Someone would come in on a bike and say recycling's cool or whatever it was. Yeah. And that was
we can all get behind that idea.
Well, but that was all pushed by the gas companies. That was all pushed by big oil. Because you're not actually recycling it.
Turns out, a lot of that ends up in the ocean, from what I understand.
So, and then the same thing happens with the information coming in about when it comes to cow farts, when it comes to climate change, when it comes about these things. And the problem is, at what point is a child going to understand with it? Okay, who is paying for this study? Hey, it doesn't mean that it's incorrect. We just have to look at each thing individually. Yes. I've had vegans on. I've had carnivores on. They all have whatever team they're playing for, their information. But a majority of it doesn't really have to do with us. It's just a lot of rich people playing a game.
Absolutely. And the thing is that I don't want to have those conversations with a 10-year-old. Yes. You know what I mean? Like you and I are discussing right now. There's a lot of nuance to it, and these are important topics. Yeah. I think you can introduce children to really important, heavy topics, but my kid isn't writing his Y's very good. Right. His Z's look like shit. To me, these are what are important. Get back to the fundamentals at 9 and 10 years old. Yeah. You want to start like having some, serious, the sky is falling conversations with my children. Why don't you wait till they're like, I don't know, 13, or how about when they can drive, and they actually have a carbon footprint, or whatever. I mean, it's like, it's just too much, and so to your question, the reason why I brought this up was because I didn't want to like make it like a political thing. It just irked me when I started thinking about how simple life was back in the early 80s when I was going to grade school at Louis White. It was great. You know what I mean? I was allowed to just be a kid. Yeah. And I think that because there is a little bit of anxiety that I noticed when my daughter, especially, because she's a real thoughtful kid. Yeah. My son is just more of a, he just wants to hang out and have fun and be a boy and
for sure.
And but my daughter, she wants to understand, and she but half of what your kids learn, they learn at home. The other half they learn at school. Yeah. It's and at least that's the way it is in my family. So we're involved in what their curricula is. as far as, looking at what is brought home, and helping them when we need to. And we're gonna be real honest with our kids, what we think about these things once they start, dabbling in things that are, arguably political.
Yeah.
And I just don't want to see that happen. I wish, so people will say, well, why don't you get involved? Get involved on the local level, and you know what? I may.
Yeah.
That may be something that I do is, and not to like take some sort of, political stance and push my, views, politically, but just to kind of say, let's make it more apolitical, back to the fundamentals entirely. I mean, they're getting plenty of reading, writing, and arithmetic, and I'm sure anybody listening to this who's in the education field will say, I don't know what the hell I'm talking about. I've had people tell me that, and that's fine. I mean, I'm not pretending to be an expert. I only know that what I see with my kids, how we want to see our kids learn, and I love our school district. It's great. I mean, I think they're doing a great job. But I just wish it was. The point is, I just wish it was, just less, because it happens a lot. And like I say, so my daughter gets very. I could tell it worries her a little bit.
Yeah.
She, it's like, and then so I have to kind of talk her off the ledge.
Yeah.
I don't, because look, we want clean air and clean water. I'm a good steward of that type of stuff. I'm a fisherman. I'm an outdoorsman.
Yeah.
I insist on it. Mm-hmm. But there's things like the Clean Water Act, back in the 70s that changed this country. I've seen the Fox River from when I was a kid go from a sludge stream to what it is now. People catching walleyes below the dam.
Right.
I can't believe what the Clean Water Act has done with the effluent from treatment plants, everything that it does to really help. These are things that actually really help the environment. Mm-hmm. But they've got my kids thinking that a cow fart is going to end humanity.
Yeah.
I mean, they're not talking about it in those terms, but I have to explain to her, look, these are theories.
Yeah.
There's things like consensus science, but there's also things like you talked about, like nuance and data. And it's like, I want her to think critically. I don't want her to think like me.
Right.
Exactly. I'm actually kind of mindful of that because I don't got it figured out. A lot of times I tell her, I'm like, you know what? You're going to know more about some things than I know.
Yeah. Well, which is wild, because I remember growing up and talking to my parents, and I thought they knew everything, like them or my grandparents. And I was like, I would just ask why, and my mom would have an answer. I'd say why, and she'd have an answer. And for an extended period of time, I was like, oh, these are just facts. Like that, my parents are just telling me facts.
Yeah, right.
So for you,
as they know them, you know what I mean? I mean, it's like, especially in today's society where there's so much availability of information and so many different people giving it.
Yeah.
What is the facts? That's kind of the hard thing.
What was the Fox River? Was it dirty when?
Oh, it was horrible. When I was a kid, I remember it was like you would catch carp.
Okay.
It's pretty much what you would catch, and some catfish, bullheads, but like game fish. There was, you were hard pressed to find a lot of healthy fish, and now it's a really good fishery. I mean, it's like,
so what was going on before?
Just you had. So my understanding is that, number one, you had industry on the river.
Okay.
Anywhere you did, there was less regulation to prevent pollution.
Okay.
And then just your effluent from, if you think about the Fox River, you've got, let's start going upstream. You've got Elgin, St. Charles, Elgin, Algonquin. All of these towns are all the sewage treatment goes there.
Yeah.
And the effluent has to meet a certain standard. This is my understanding. I'm not an expert on it, but I know from talking to my dad, who was an expert on it, that it has done a lot to really clean up the environment. The Clean Water Act. It was basically just this legislation that really focused on pollution prevention.
Yeah.
And it was effective. And I've seen the Fox River personally really clean up.
Yeah.
And yeah, and then there's the big textbook stories regarding what it did. Like when there was some river in Cleveland that would catch fire because it was so polluted. It was like those kind of things.
And was that the Blue Jeans factory, or is just something around all those textiles? Or
I don't exactly remember. Yeah. It's funny. The reason I learned about that was because there was some beer that was made called like Burning River beer. and it was made in Cleveland, and it was a really good beer. My buddy who grew up in Cleveland, he explained to me, he goes, "Oh yeah, it's because the river used to literally catch fire. It was so polluted."
Wild.
Right, so that kind of stuff happens. So I mean, it's like, I want my kids to be mindful of clean. That we all want clean water, we all want clean air.
When did you start becoming aware of government? Like for us, I just remember the I'm only a bill on Capitol Hill. Like that was like the only thing. We learned a little bit about Congress, Senate, how they get votes and stuff like that, but there wasn't a lot of, I guess, interaction for me for an extended period of time. I'd say even up to college. But like for you, when did government start coming into your life or peeking its head?
Well, I think that as far as learning about it, I mean, there was some civics classes, that we'd have, I think maybe middle school.
Okay.
Social studies, I think they called it. There was a class called government. I remember that was taught by the same guy, Mr. Radke, who taught driver's ed. But I think that you hear your parents talk. Yes, sir. I think I have to be careful too, because I don't want my kids to be a grumpy old man while my son's 12. I want them to live and learn and figure things out and deal with their peers and stuff like that. And I'm going to protect them from the bullshit.
Yeah.
Just am. Because it when you see it, you just do. But I think government. I think I remember like when my dad had his own business back in the 70s. He had his own engineering company.
Okay.
In Aurora, and I remember him complaining that the Carter administration, took his business out because inflation was so high, and there was. So I remember.
Was that because jobs were sent overseas?
I don't know. I don't think so. I remember there was like oil embargoes going on. I think there were some political moves that made that said something with the dollar value, and I don't know enough about what happened back then. But I remember my dad complaining about it, not at great length.
Yeah.
And then I remember when Reagan came in, it was like this. I remember hearing the discussions. Because when you're young, you're largely unaffected by government.
Right.
You really are. I mean, I think when I first started really kind of caring to be informed is probably after 9/11. Okay. I think that's when that was when
we'll pause that for a second, but I always want to ask this question. What was lunch like? Was the food good? Was it like...
Oh, in grade school?
Yeah.
Oh God. I mean, I remember I loved it because I think you built up such an appetite as a kid because you were so active that I remember I would just get really hungry. Yeah. And I mean, and I remember like the pizza was like the best stuff I ever had. That big triangular square piece of pizza. So my wife now works at the Davis School lunchroom. Okay. And so they have this watchdog program where parents can go and work and where the fathers, because it's called watchdogs, so fathers can go and hang out during the lunch periods. Okay. And just kind of help coordinate and herd the cats, and then you go outside at recess and make sure no one's killing each other. And but they had that pizza. It looked exactly the same. And I said, "Oh, Kate, can I get a piece of that pizza?" And she said, "Yeah, you can." So, and I remember eating it, and I remember thinking, "God, it was like pure crap." Yeah. And but when you were a kid, it was like you were so. I mean, I was so hungry all the time when I was a kid that school lunch was the best. Yeah. They had like these peanut butter squares. Even the green beans were good. And, I think they had like a Salisbury steak or something. I mean, it was like, but it was great. I mean, I think it was similar to what it is today. Because I went to the kids' school and saw what they're serving them, and we send our kids to school with lunch. Yeah, we send with we don't buy the lunch.
Right. Well, it's interesting because I think
not that it's bad. We just don't.
McDonald's may not have changed like their menu, but their burger has a lot more ingredients, or their fries have a lot more ingredients.
And they took beef tallow out of it too.
Yeah. So I think it's at some point government was like, hey, we're gonna put all of our lunches or whatever. Money seems to seep its way into a lot of the things on
the food pyramid, for example. Yeah. So you hear about this stuff. I remember like when I was a kid looking at the food pyramid. What's funny about the food pyramid is like I remember it was like we learned it and they showed it to you. But I mean, did any parents ever really like use the food pyramid as a guide to feeding their kids? My parents were like they had 6 kids and They just were focused on putting a meal on the table.
Right, and I think
she didn't break out the food pyramid when she was making her meatballs and noodles.
As context goes, it was made because in that time in America, people were dying of starvation. So they're like, hey, this is how we're going to keep people alive. Okay. So that's what, but it was from government. So it took 15, 20 years to get out there. And by the time it was out there, we figured out agricultural farming. We figured out how to get bigger yields. We figured out how to actually have abundance.
Yeah.
And at that time, it was like, oh, maybe we don't need to do this anymore. But then it was another 20, 30 years. I could be wrong, but I think My Plate was out after that, and it had more protein-centric fruits and vegetables and not as much as carbs. But that's when it's really tough if the government's saying something for 20 years that says you need to do this.
Yeah.
That's what the literature is going to be in school. And then when you get to my friend, she has her master's in dietetics. Every 5 years, by the time she's out of school, whatever she's getting her master's in is different than what she learned in college. So getting out the nutritional information is extremely difficult. And that's where the food pyramid came from. And I remember in middle school, we weren't even basing it off of the food pyramid. That was just information we had. The textbooks haven't changed. You remember you look through, it's like, who else had this before you? And it was like 1992.
Yeah, sure. That's his name was. Yeah, right, exactly.
Yeah, sure. Like our school's not switching it out. And it's tough because you also have to fight against lobbyists on that end. So once again, context goes with everything. Yeah, the food pyramid was wild, but it was perfect at the time that they started looking into it. It's like less people will die because they're not starving anymore. But on that,
well,
stuff,
you would think that this country could set a higher standard than just prevent starving. You know what I mean?
Well,
what about health?
I think it was World War, but like they wanted to work on the health, but it just takes so long to get anything going as far as like
we've learned a lot
moving things through government.
I think we've learned a lot. Yeah.
Absolutely, and
I mean just in our lifetime.
Yeah, I worked
50 years.
at the Chamber of Commerce, I think, at Geneva, if that's correct. Just because I wanted to go into politics at one point, and I worked for like a couple of weeks on a no bid. I wouldn't say it was a no bid contract, but it was only one company that was bidding on putting all of the information from the police stations or the fire departments or wherever it was just in the government in one area, because if you go to either the prison or the jail or the county or whatever, they all had, sometimes it was on note cards. Like the information was not, you couldn't search it because they needed a piece of paper.
Yeah.
It was an outstanding price for whatever it was.
Yeah.
But it still needed to be done, and it took a long time to get there. Mm-hmm. And I think there's probably still some counties or some states that they're just running. They're slow. It's just not our best minds, slow, unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, I'm a good example of that. I work in government, so
we'll talk about how we got there. So 9/11 happens.
Well, I just became really aware of government then because it was like, that's when like decisions the government made really started affecting me.
Okay.
I was, I was 31 years old.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I was like, but I was still like, when I was 31, I might as well have been 16 years old.
Yeah.
I was still just kind of coasting through life, having fun, partying with my friends. And, I was working, a career job and stuff like that, but I didn't really... I was still invincible when I was 31, but then that was like, boy, I really had to start thinking about like because I really didn't have a strong political
So
stance.
What, from high school to college, what got you to the college that you went to, or where did you go after high school?
So after high school, I didn't go, I went to Wabansie Community College and just kind of tried to figure out what I wanted to do. I tried culinary arts and journalism classes. Then I went down to Champaign and did a couple semesters down at a school called Parkland College. Really enjoyed that. It was more of an English kind of major. And then was the youngest of 6 kids, so didn't really have, it wasn't like my parents were going to like flip the bill for me to go to a really expensive, first of all, full disclosure, it wasn't likely that I was going to get into anywhere really big because I wasn't a very studious person to begin with. Mm-hmm. But when I was young, when I was in my college years, I really just didn't know what I really wanted to do. I didn't have a lot of direction.
Well, as far as the direction goes, did you talk to your parents? Did you talk to friends? How did you figure out how you were doing things?
Just trial and error. I was never very goal oriented. So but working and earning a living was always very, a must.
Okay.
I wasn't lazy. I always had a job. I always sought to improve my employment, and I did.
What was your first job?
So I would say like right out of like high school while I was trying to figure out what I wanted to maybe study. I was working for an engineering company called Rempe Sharp Engineering in Geneva.
Okay.
Doing like construction-related engineering type work, more like surveying and construction inspection, different things like that.
Yeah.
And then that just kind of springboarded into like, what ultimately was able to get the opportunity to take more technical training through like work type courses,
Okay.
like Illinois Department of Transportation offers these courses, and you learn like real practical world experience. It was almost like a trade school kind of approach to things, where like they're teaching you the real practical stuff that you're going to use today.
How they get you in there? Did they say, hey, this is going to be a good career, you'll make a lot of money, or that's just the direction?
So I took this job with my dad. My dad was an engineer. Civil engineer. My dad was a civil engineer, and his friend owned an engineering company in Geneva, and I went to work for him as a summer job.
Okay.
And then I ended up staying there. I want to say I was there like 6 years.
Nice.
Yeah, and then I remember taking a job with a developer. That's when we did some work over here across the street.
Yeah.
And then I took some work from there. Somebody asked me to come work for them with another engineering company. Did that. Then I moved to Tennessee, worked with an engineering company, geotechnical, and I just kept moving.
Yeah.
I always found the best way to make more money is to switch jobs.
Yeah. Is that something somebody told you? Because I feel like just recently that's what I've been hearing. Because I have some buddies in tech jobs, and they're like, you got to move. You
got to move, otherwise, because you get one opportunity to negotiate salary.
Yeah.
When they hire you. So, and that's advice right there that I think is good advice, is that, of course, people, when you're applying for a job, you want to sell yourself, and you don't want to come across as arrogant or presumptuous, but it doesn't hurt, in my opinion, to say, can you add 10 grand to that salary?
Yeah.
Or can I have an extra 2 weeks vacation? Because once you get in there, that's it.
Right.
They're not sitting down with you once you're going, hey, we should probably renegotiate your salary.
Yeah.
So, because the worst thing they can do is say no. And I have found, now that I've dealt with the different HR departments over the years, it's not going to be a deal breaker because you came in and just asked for a little bump in salary.
Yeah.
Especially if you're qualified. Mm-hmm. If you're not qualified, then you might, if you think you might be slightly underqualified, you might want to just kind of get in there and see if, because there's also, just quality of life type things. Like this last job I took. I literally ride my bike to work in the summer. It's fantastic.
Oh, that's lovely.
Oh, it's lovely. And I was, and I had a 40-minute commute every day for 16 years.
Yeah.
I would take a pay cut for that. I didn't, but I could have. I would have. But so anyhow, I think what was my point? My point was that moving jobs was always kind of, when you're a young person, was how you, especially if you didn't have a degree. Yeah. If you don't have a college degree, you've got to what happens is people recognize your work abilities, people who you work with in other fields and other companies, and they go, hey, and you kind of get recruited. Hey, why don't you come over and work for us? We'll give you a little bump in pay. Yeah. You do that 3 or 4 times by the time you're 31 years old, and all of a sudden you're moving to a nicer place, or whatever.
Yeah. So what does that look like as far as, because I worked construction for the labor union for 5 years.
Oh, did you?
And it was very cutthroat, as in you didn't want to be the second best, because then the person first, they were trying to take you were trying to take their job. So I'd be like, hey, I'm very happy with where I am. The foreman's going to tell you what to do. Was it union? Yeah, it was local too.
Okay.
So I knew, or a buddy of mine, it was his dad that was the treasurer or whatever. So I wasn't trying to get on the company side to travel with him. I did pipeline work. So whenever work would come to town, I would get on there, work 3-4 months. They'd be like, hey, we're doing layoffs. I'd raise my hand and people are like, what are you doing? I'm like,
I'm
not a huge fan of this work.
Sure, right.
But
if you have options, you have options.
I was just working 80 to 100 hour weeks, so I'm perfectly fine taking a couple months off.
Yeah, right. Especially with the union.
But yeah, most of the guys there, they wanted to make sure they either got to the company side or that they were on for another week or two. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't, I mean, it's construction, but it seemed like it was high school. Like, oh, I got to be like, there was always talking behind the back or so-and-so is making mistakes. Some of the jobs that the one job that I actually had a good time on, the foreman was great. He would cook out for lunch. No one was worried about their job. Everybody more or less knew their place. And we got the job done. We were flowing. There was no arguments.
Yeah.
But that was one job out of probably like 37.
Yeah.
Also, every big job I was on, either someone died or ended up in the hospital.
Holy shit.
Yeah, the first one I went on,
like trench caving in.
So similar things. The first guy had a heart attack on the right of way. Then one guy got slammed in the back of the head with a bucket and then landed on another guy. If you're working that many hours to stay awake, you use uppers, which for the long time I thought was just caffeine. Turns out not just caffeine.
Like amphetamine or something.
Yep. And then to fall asleep at night, you're drinking. Yeah. So then to wake up again.
Oh, yeah, it's not great. You want to hear an interesting statistic?
Yes.
I don't know if this is true or not.
Let's hear it.
So I worked in public works for 16 years.
Okay.
And in the engineering division, and came across a lot of guys who had put in 30 plus years and retired from the laborers union. Mm-hmm. Now these are guys like you were describing who are down in the trench turning bolts and wrenches.
Yeah.
And
working, just getting it done,
hand digging for utilities, and make sure they're not hitting electric lines. Working, busting their ass, backbreaking work.
I did that for 5 years. I'm like, this is wild.
So the statistic is this: that, and I should do some research to see if this is true, because this sounds crazy, but they say that a laborer, the average amount of time that a laborer collects a pension, who retires from the laborers union, after I think it's 25 years, is 18 months.
Oh, it's atrocious.
And then they croak.
Yeah.
100%. So on average, like the laborers union is paying out 18 months worth of pension pay before that person dies.
Yeah. The insurance is phenomenal. You keep it your whole life, but it's not super long.
So I think what that statistic is saying is that the work is killing them.
Yeah.
And the lifestyle, like you say, there's a lot of I don't know that. Well, I don't even know.
Anything you think is probably true.
Well, like you said, there were people doing a lot of drinking on the off time.
Sometimes on the on time.
Guys smoking cigs to just kind of keep a lot of coffee. You're drinking coffee all day.
Yeah.
I mean, the work is exercise, but it's not good exercise.
And the
poor ergonomics and
there would always, not always, but there'd be every once in a while there was a guy like myself that would work out after work or before work, whatever it was, just to get it done. And our bodies hurt the least because the problem with the work is the game. Like you're not training your body, you're beating it up. Like if you're running,
you're right. There's a difference.
If you're running a marathon, that's not training. That's your event. And if you constantly are running a marathon, you're just beating yourself up.
That's a good point.
So
how do you? So give me what's the difference between training for a marathon versus running the marathon?
I think my best example would be if your goal is to sprint with a 50-pound bag and your max, or just carry a 50-pound bag, but your max carry is 50 pounds, it's going to be really hard. But if you're in much better shape, say you can carry 300-400 pounds, carrying that 50 pounds is not going to be as much work. So if you're used to running, if your capacity is 15 to 20 miles, but you're only running maybe 5 miles, it's not going to beat your body up as much. So if you have a higher capacity, if your strength is better, if your lung capacity is better, then that's great. But most people are working to their capacity each day, so they don't really have much left.
So are you pretty much in training for something?
I do CrossFit. I play a bunch of different sports. I was playing ultimate frisbee the other day in Chicago. Played some rugby. I play volleyball a lot. But the thing is,
stay active.
When I just play sports, my knees start to hurt.
Well, for sure. No, I get it, dude.
So the last month, I guess starting in December, we went on a 2-week vacation. Kids got sick, then holidays and stuff like that. And I had still been playing volleyball when I got back, but my knees started bugging me. But I just recently started squatting a little bit more, going to the gym more.
Strengthening your knees?
Yeah. So it's just the max capacity that my body was used to was just at volleyball. So everything was 100%. But if I'm training my legs, then every impact is not going to be that 100% what I'm used to. It's going to be, a 50%, a 30%, whatever it is.
Yeah. So when you're training, and the reason why I asked that, because you said something that interested me, where we were talking about like the laborers union, like where guys are, beating the shit out of their body, where there's a difference between exercise and strengthening your body. There's a difference between that and what a lot of these laborers do, where you're just beating the shit out of your body.
Yeah.
Where it's bad. And it's like, okay, well, why is that type of really hard work so much? Why is it affecting the body in such a negative way?
Just because it's not a stimulus in which you're training. You're not going to do 1,500 repetitions of digging the spade with your shoulder.
It's not controlled. It's not controlled.
Right. I mean, if you're in the gym and you do 1,500 reps of it, you're not. That's not giving you the stimulus to grow your muscle. That's your body being like, "Hey, we're breaking down." I would say my best example is when I'm baby wearing the kids. Like for any women or mothers out there, like it is unbelievable if you're baby wearing or even have a baby in your stomach. You're not training when you're carrying that child, so the pain or the everything is just going to be so hard for a woman that's not working out, or even for me if I'm baby wearing for like 3 hours. I'm like, this is wild,
like
because it's
like
not
the baby Bjorn sling.
You
were the sling. Yeah, I did that with my kids. It was great.
And we have other things, and then sometimes it's like, hey, I'm not training right now. This is just work. Like this is the game time situation.
Yeah, that's right. Right, exactly. So I guess I've hit
capacity. My low back hurts. Yes.
So training. So like, because I've never ran a marathon. I mean, the longest I've ever run was the 10-mile bulldog challenge down to the Arrowhead with the F3 guys. Yeah. And which like blew my mind that I could do that. Yeah. And this is kind of a digression, but this kind of segues into the F3 where I met you.
Yep.
Never being a real goal-oriented person, and just kind of trial and error through life as far as my career and stuff, and then eventually landing in a good place. I mean, and a lot of luck, but the goal kind of mentality. There's so much opportunity in F3 to kind of like think about your physical and mental health and they do it in a way that's so kind of unassuming and so like you wouldn't expect it to kind of happen.
Right.
You find yourself being more goal-oriented and you're not even trying.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's really cool because you're you do things and you're like, oh, I can't believe I just did that.
Yeah. Community's so underrated. Like if you go into a Planet Fitness, nice and warm, a couple people working out, most of the people on the treadmill, whatever it is.
And there's no incentive to for you to have any kind of exchange with these people.
And then it's negative 15 degrees. All you guys are out there suffering together, and you're just running or rucking or what. Like
that's the best.
The sun comes up during the end of the workout.
Yep.
Phenomenal.
That's awesome. Yeah. So it's funny because it was like I remember one of the most proudest things that I've ever done.
Yeah.
Now this sounds maybe crazy to somebody like you who's like just a really healthy person who's like always kind of been focused on achieving good physical health. But when I got that 100 posts patch, I remember going, this is the fucking coolest thing ever, man. Yeah. I'm like, I can't believe that I did this 100 times. Yeah. When like prior to that, like 3 years prior, not 3 years, but like. How long did it take me to get to 100 posts? Maybe a year or something. Like
that's awesome.
Yes, like last year, the thought of me like doing like anything 100 times that was making myself better was like, it just wouldn't have popped into my head that way. So so it's cool that like the group really kind of has a lot of the organization offers a lot of opportunity to set even little mini goals.
Yeah.
Like right now, I mean, I can't wait to get back into the swing of F3. I've been kind of on a hiatus. I'll go once in a while, but I used to go pretty regularly, and I plan on getting back into it, and I'm going to. But it's one of these things where you're like, hell, I could start out with a goal like, I'm just gonna, I'm gonna to get back into it. I'm gonna go do a 6-pack next week. Mm-hmm. Just do it. I'm gonna go do run club. I'm gonna go do run club twice, ruck, and 2 boot camps. Mm-hmm. Piece of cake. I can do that. Yeah. And when I do that, by the end of that 6-pack that I've done. Mm-hmm. There's going to be this goal that I've accomplished that I'm going to be really proud of that I did, even though it's just something pretty simple. There are guys that do that every week.
Right.
I think about like guys that are there all the time, and I'm like, but maybe they're appreciating it as much as I do, but so that's one of the great things is that it offers you the ability to conquer these little micro goals that carry over into just the way you carry yourself through work and your family life. Just a great organization.
What was your physical and mental health before you started?
Horrible.
At F3? Yeah.
Horrible.
Break it down.
Drank a lot.
Yeah.
Was pretty much a functioning alcoholic. COVID was driving me literally crazy. Got into some legal trouble as a result of my drinking too much.
Yeah.
Was facing the loss of job and family, horribly depressed. Yeah. Ran into Mikowski at work. We work on the same construction site. Mm-hmm. He's like, "Hey, I noticed you're looking a little down. Do you work out?" And I scoffed. Like, do I look like I worked out? I was like 20 something pounds heavier. I mean, I think I was like 178. Mm-hmm. And it's funny. I was like, he goes, "Just show up, do this," and he's talking about it. And I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna try it. And did it, killed me. I think I threw up the first time. I showed up, my first day was, the first day I showed up, it was like right in the middle of one of these fitness tests.
Oh, yeah.
Like one of these ridiculous, like I remember Dr. Evil had me bear crawling across the field out there at Arrowhead. It was like, it might as well have been 100 miles.
Right.
And I was like thinking, and I remember like there was guys that were like doing it, and I'm like, Jesus Christ, look at these guys, man.
Yeah.
And they didn't all look like Adonises.
Right.
They were just normal Joes like me, and I'm like, these guys,
just getting after it.
They were just getting after it, and I was like, and I remember being so sore I couldn't even pick up like.
Such a good feeling.
It was. I couldn't even pick something up off the ground. I remember having to call the kids over to help me pick something up after that first week, and then I remember saying to somebody, I think it was Geppetto. I was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. He's like, oh dude, you got to work through the soreness. You got to work through it. Yeah. He goes, that's the only way to stop being sore is you got to work through it. And I was like, really? And I'm like, is he just kind of like, is he just being like super positive, Mr. Positive, or is this true? So I'm like, yeah. So I listened to what he said. I did it. I just kept going to try to not be sore. Yeah. I remember there got to be a period of time where I was like, wow, I'm not sore anymore.
Yeah.
I'm like, it's like then all of a sudden like you discover that there's this thing called core strength, which I never ever had, and like, I heard people mention it, but it's like when you're carrying yourself with some core strength, life is just better.
Right.
It is. You're just like, it's like, I wasn't my back wasn't sore all the time. Yeah. I slept better.
For sure.
I went to the doctor, my cholesterol levels were good. And it was like, I was like, really, really blown away by how the organization is put together and how thoughtful it is. I mean, the guy that like arranged how things work with F3 is a fucking genius. Yeah. He is. He really is. He's got a formula that for a guy like me, when I got into that. Yeah. So I quit drinking. I quit smoking. I was smoking a pack of cigs a day when I started. I was drinking way too much, self-medicating through COVID because I was so pissed off. And it was the formula that a guy like me needed exactly. Yeah. And to a certain extent, I would say, not to be dramatic, but to a certain extent, probably maybe have saved my life. Yeah. One thing's for sure, my doctor told me after he saw me the next time, he was like, holy shit, Ted. He goes, you just added 10 years to your life. Yeah. Because he said the first thing I do, he goes, when you're in that little waiting room waiting for me, he goes, I'm looking at a chart. He goes, the very first thing I look at is weight. Mm-hmm. He goes, you dropped 27 pounds since I saw you last. Yeah. He goes, I know that if somebody is a certain size, they're pushing. He was like, I know what kind of complaints I'm going to be getting. I'm going to be getting, heartburn, gastrointestinal problems,
right.
hemorrhoids, these different things that go along with just being somebody who just is general malaise type health.
Yeah.
And he's like, when I saw that you had dropped all this weight, he goes, and I came in and saw you. He goes, I am so impressed. You just added 10 years to your life. Whatever you're doing, keep it up.
Yeah.
I told him about this group. He's like, wow, man. He's like, that's really cool. And it's like, what? That's why we have people like, Hawkeye, where we have doctors that go
right.
and there's police officers and firemen and guys like yourself, and it's just a whole people from all different walks of life.
Mm-hmm.
And, and everybody gets into it for a different reason, I'm sure.
Right.
But in my case, it was just, I needed something like that.
So what do you think brought you to, this brings back how we got there.
Mm-hmm.
What was drinking to you? Did it first start off as like a party thing and then it just started off as like I do it by myself? Like what was your path?
When I was a youngster, I just, we would go get beers and drink, and some of his parents would go out of town and we'd have a party at the house, and it was just, and then that just kind of sprung into, typical.
What was the best party you had when you were in high school?
Best party?
Yeah.
Oh God, my friend Chris Johnson's parents used to go down to their houseboat in Ottawa and leave him alone like every weekend all summer, and it was just me and like this like these five guys would just get together and we would get like a case of Mickey's Big Mouths and get shit faced and order pizza and just act like idiots and just have fun and have our girlfriends over and and just be stupid and but that was like high school summers and but then as you grow older and you get responsibilities and stuff, a lot of people do that, you start doing it less. And I did, but then it just got to be where like when I had my kids, I was somebody who smoked and drank. Mm-hmm. I appreciated a good glass of scotch, and I used to make beer.
Yeah.
I fancied myself as a bit of a beer connoisseur, and I wasn't just always pounding down a case of Busch Light. I enjoyed it.
I was a classy
I enjoyed
man.
it. I mean, because it's there's nothing wrong with having an adult beverage, but you have to be responsible about it. But I lost that. I lost that control.
Where do you think the loss of control came from?
So I would say that's a good question. I don't know. I've never really thought about that. It was just kind of, I think there's just the addictive quality of alcohol. I mean, alcohol is, it can be a demon for some people.
Yeah. Well, I have a very addictive personality.
Me too.
That's why I don't.
I'm an all or nothing guy. Seriously. I mean, it's like, I'm one cigarette away from a pack a day habit.
Yeah.
I'm one beer away from, a case a week.
Yeah.
And so to me it was easy. I just had to make, but it wasn't easy. I had to really
right.
I had to hit my rock bottom, which was just, being very self-destructive.
Yeah.
But the good thing, I was lucky because I was able to make the decision one time.
Okay.
And I don't think I'm playing mind games with myself by saying that as some exercise and staying off of it, because I'm not tempted.
Yeah.
I just was like, okay, some people just get to the point where it's enough.
Right.
But if I didn't have F3 to get me through that, I don't know, it probably would have been really hard to just stop drinking and smoking cold turkey, especially for somebody who was really self-medicating hard during COVID.
What's the conversation you have when you're having a drink or smoking? Is there like, oh, I don't want to do this, or this is here to drown out the voice, or what's going on inside your head at that point?
Well, I think you probably, if you look at the physiology and what it does to your brain, with your frontal lobes and what it really the first thing that goes is your judgment.
Mm-hmm.
So you're drinking and and you're I think you probably just kind of stop caring.
Okay.
About what it's doing to you, or what I mean, because I think you for somebody like me who was abusing it,
mm-hmm.
You're not thinking straight, and you just don't have any other perspective. This is just life. You get used, it's funny how you get used to feeling like shit. You don't even really think about the fact that you feel like shit.
Yeah.
Life is just about, having these different ailments and, and hangovers and headaches.
I'm just getting old.
Right, exactly. But then it's because it was funny because it's when you quit drinking and you're not doing F3.
Yeah.
It's going to be probably a really slow, gradual improvement in your health. Matter of fact, you might even have some, there are some people like they have to like medically detox. And stopping cold turkey can probably be harmful if you're not careful. But by quitting everything and going straight into this program with these guys, I call it a program because to me it was kind of like a program. With these guys where it's like, where like people are like encouraging you, and there's pre-blasts, and people are DMing you, hey, where you been? Get your ass out here. And there's encouragement while you're struggling through the first few months of really, being somebody who's really out of shape, and then it's like you see improvement pretty damn quick.
Yes.
That's what I loved about it, was that, of all the times in my life where I've tried to like get healthier. Yeah. Like taking supplements or something. You never go, oh boy, that multivitamin I've been taking for 2 weeks, I feel like $1 million. It just doesn't do shit that you feel. Right. It may be doing something, but you don't feel.
In 10 years, you might be like, oh yeah.
You don't get in 10 years. You don't get the results.
$2,000 was worth it.
For sure, right. But with F3, it's like, man, you go a couple months and you're like, holy crap, I like totally am seeing the results of this. Yeah. And so the timing of it was perfect for me. Thank God for Mikowski, the guy I own. Yeah. But, and it's funny because this is also interesting, is that after a couple years of doing it pretty religiously, and I was maybe a 3-time-a-week person, poster, 2 to 3, sometimes more. But, I got over that hump. There was all this uncertainty for a couple years of like, my God, is this going to affect my job? Is it going to affect my family? And then I ended up getting a new and better job. Everything turned out for me legally. I'm getting healthier. Yeah. And then it's almost like I started not feeling like I didn't need it anymore. You know what I mean? Yeah. It was like, you feel like, it's like, I don't need this anymore. So I kind of like took a break from it, from thinking that this isn't something that, because at the time for a couple years, I needed it. Yeah. Because I really was making some very drastic life changes,
there's a point where it's like, I know I'm going to feel fantastic over this. I need to do this for my mental health, my physical health. Yes. And then it's like, oh, this sucks.
Yeah, well,
I always feel good afterwards. But the
getting up sucks.
Yeah, the motivation to either set that alarm or to whatever it is. And it's like, I'm not in the routine. So maybe the motivation I need is like a 7 and I'm at like a 5. Like I didn't bridge that gap. Like there's still motivation, but I didn't bridge the gap, whatever is needed. Yep. And I was like, oh, definitely not going.
Yeah, right. Right. And the thing is, like I sit and think about, why is it that I'm not going anymore? And it's like, it's because, I felt like I maybe didn't need it anymore. Maybe, there was never any real definitive moment or reason. But I find that, I really, really miss it. It's like, and it's the guys, it's the time of day, it's the weather, it's how good you feel afterwards. You're like, you get that dopamine rush afterwards. It's having coffee and just the way you feel, and because you can work out on your own. Yeah. But you're not going to go out and bear crawl up a fucking hill on your own. You're going to go for a run, or you're going to go to the weight room, which is what I do. Yeah. But with these guys, it's just a whole different thing.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because I go to a CrossFit gym in Lisle, and then they don't run until like it's nice weather outside, and like they'll come inside like, ooh, it's so cold outside, and then like I will the day before just worked out. And it, like outside, and it's like, oh man, I haven't done either of those in a hot minute.
Yeah. And the other thing about it is that I loved about it was that, like, so for me, the whole story about it helping me through some periods in my life where I was kind of at a low end. Yeah. There are people who get into it who it's certainly not the only reason to get involved with something like F3. It's for people who are just looking for. Just the fact that it's free of charge. And you've got guys who are really good at doing a queue. Yeah. That's the other thing about it, is like when you think about some of those guys and what they have to offer in for that 45 minutes to an hour a day, it's invaluable. You're not going to get that. You're not going to get that at your local yoga place or even your local CrossFit. There are guys who are really talented at doing that stuff. Yeah. There's a couple people that I'm thinking about right now who come to mind who are like, I would pay $100 a month to go to a Coat Factory or a Dr. Evil or a Brick Q. And there's a handful of other guys that will come to mind. But because it's such a good value of what you're getting. It's like they're very thoughtful about how they do it. They know what they're doing. I mean, from what I understand, you had some really kick-ass ones too. I hear guys talking about the highlighter cues where you had guys like breathing through their nose the whole time and stuff like that.
I would always have a theme.
I would not. Yeah, you have a theme, but that's cool. It's thoughtful and it's effective. It's cool.
I have one that I gotta pick a Thursday, but when it's too cold, you're not allowed to use the track. But it's I'm gonna bring a bunch of weights.
Oh, what the Raptors done?
Yeah, and you have to carry them whenever you put them down. You got to run a lap, and the goal is just see how many times you can get around the track. It's probably going to turn into a partner workout, or the other one's going to be a burpee mile, but with a partner. So whenever your partner's going,
you burpee for a mile.
Yeah.
How do you do that?
You do a burpee and then broad jump.
Holy fuck. For a mile?
Yeah. So I've
How many times on the track is that?
4. So I've lunged a quarter mile before. That took entirely too long. The Bears backup quarterback did the burpee mile. A buddy of mine.
My arms hurt thinking about it. I mean, it's funny you say that, but it's like, it's like that's the kind of thing that like that sounds ridiculous.
Yeah.
But then you think about some of the stuff that you've achieved during doing like some of the workouts you've done. You go, yeah, I mean, I've done similar stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, we did a rifle carry around Raptors Den with a Flushy.
Yeah.
Where you rifle carry as long as you can.
That's impressive.
You rifle carry as long as you can with your coupon, then you drop it when you have to, and then you have to run a lap.
Yep.
And I forget what the goal was, but I remember thinking, holy crap, man, well, I would never do this on my own.
For sure.
And you get results because of things like that. You know, you've pushed your body to do things.
So outside of F3, how or when you started or while you're doing it now, how has the rest of your life changed?
Oh, God, just focus and just clarity, mental clarity, just positive happiness, better father, better husband. And that's a combination of getting off of, not abusing alcohol and of course cigarettes are just horrible. I mean, it's funny. It's like interesting. Now I'm hearing this stuff online that's saying that nicotine is actually good for you. Now they're right, but they're not saying that cigarettes are good for you, but they're saying that I guess this is interesting, like nicotine. And again, I'm not condoning everybody smoking again, but they're talking about how like COVID patients like who smoked fared better because of the nicotine. They're thinking. Now, I don't know how true any of this is. I'm considering the source. Half of the people saying this are online are probably like endorsed by Zyn. Those things. But it's intriguing to think that, I mean, I know for a fact that that smoking, the cognitive, like that mental clarity you would get after having a smoke, but I mean, as far as how my life changed, I love not being a slave to an addictive substance. Yeah. I remember like running out of smokes and like, I didn't care what time of day it was. I would panic. Like, shit, I got to get to the White Hen now. Go get some cigarettes. It didn't matter. It was like, it became the most important thing in the world. And then like being like at a restaurant and having to step outside and smoke or, it was like, and then the smell, you smelled horrible. Smoking was nasty. I did chew gum years ago trying to get off of cigarettes, and then I got hooked on the gum. And
the nicotine gum, or
nicotine, totally. It was like I would take a 6 milligram piece of gum I'd have in my mouth all the time. I'd fall asleep with gum in my mouth, but but I don't miss it. But it's just interesting that they say that I've even heard that like nicotine, like I think Tucker Carlson was saying that nicotine helps men produce testosterone.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things out there that do a lot of different stuff.
Yeah,
probably
whether it's true or not, I don't know.
There was a bunch of things.
But it's interesting to think.
For sure.
If it's the delivery mechanism that's the problem.
Right.
You got to get it in you without damaging your lungs.
Figure out how to do that.
Right.
As far as when you're feeling more mentally and physically better, what does being a better father look like? Just being more present, being able to do more. What is?
Yes, being more present. Yeah, I mean, it's like when you're an alcoholic, and you get home from work, and the first thing you do is have a couple of beers in the garage before you even walk in the house.
Okay.
And then your mood is kind of volatile. When you're somebody who drinks a lot, I'm not, it wasn't always anger, but it was like just not sincere. It's kind of disingenuous. You're just really kind of being disingenuous all the time if you're abusing it around your children. Whereas now it's like everything is just, they're getting 100% of the person that they can call dad.
Yeah. How happy is your wife?
Oh, I think she's very happy. Oh God, yeah. Oh yeah, she was done with it. She was like, you know what? I mean, bless her. Bless her. God bless her. She was very inspiring. She was, very understanding, and she's come from a family that's had, some dysfunctionality. Me too. And so to her, it wasn't like. It wasn't like I was Miss Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. It was just this person. I mean, she was a bartender. That's how I met her.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like we kind of signed up for each other. Mm-hmm. But then it was like after a while we were like, look, we have kids now. We've got a family. It's not just you and me out, going to dinner and drinking beer and going on vacation and drinking wine and. It was like a lot of our activity was, a lot of our social activity was surrounded by like having a drink and, which is nothing wrong with that. I mean, I wish I could go to wine country and go and hang, but it's just not in the cards for me. I got to find other ways to have fun. Mm-hmm. So, she's very happy, but I think my kids were like 5 when I quit drinking, and they've even said that they appreciate the difference because, like you say, I'm just more present. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
What does your life look like now, just as far as like the goals that you're setting for yourself, or just the path?
So I have a new job with the city of St. Charles, which I love because it's my hometown. Mm-hmm. I've worked in municipal government for going on 20 years, and putting in the effort to
so you know how government works.
I do, totally. Well, I know how local government works, but to put in the effort and like have and kind of putting in for your hometown it's different. It's
really
you really kind of. I find myself really caring more about what I'm doing.
That's cool.
Yeah, you really do. You end up really and kind of like it's not that I didn't care when I was working in Carpentersville.
Yeah, but.
You have no affinity to that town.
Yeah.
I mean, if you have a good work ethic, it doesn't matter where you work.
Right.
But I think your work ethic or your attitude about your work is better when you're kind of doing it for something closer to home.
Mm-hmm. So what does that work look like?
My job.
Yeah.
So I work with developers doing helping get development built.
Okay.
So there's plan review, there's permitting, inspections, acceptance, and then just we're kind of like the liaison to make sure that the standards and ordinances and codes, construction related. I'm the construction engineer for community development.
Okay.
So you're kind of working with them to make sure that, because a lot of times what they're building, we're going to end up accepting new streets, new utilities. They got to be done. They got to be done right.
That's good.
And so So I'm working kind of hand in glove with them to get the project successfully completed so that everybody does, everybody's represented and so it's cool.
Yeah. Yeah. So what would you feel without, I guess, getting yourself in trouble with the local government? What's the bottlenecks that you see?
With government?
Yeah.
The bottlenecks for the
just like what you see it, or maybe when you were working at the last municipality.
So I think that morale.
Okay.
It's you've got a lot of union guys that work around you.
Yeah.
I'm not in the union.
Okay.
And I'm not against unions.
Yeah.
But. I don't even really know. I guess I really shouldn't even say that the union is a factor, but so the union is gonna, they're gonna have collective bargaining. They're gonna get some guarantees of certain types of raises and stuff every year, but you want. It's hard to keep morale up because when the tax base goes down, your budget goes down.
Okay.
Like something like 85-90% of the budget of a municipal government goes towards paying salaries.
Oh, so I didn't know that.
Yeah. So the first thing that happens when budgets go down, when there's less, cities operate predominantly on sales tax revenue.
Okay.
So when there's less sales tax revenue, which you see during a recession, in order to make your budgets balanced, the first thing you do is you get rid of staff.
Interesting. Okay.
So when you're doing more with less, it does that you end up there's a hit to the morale.
Yeah.
And I've seen that in government where people are just like, this sucks.
Because overworked, underpaid.
I don't know about overworked, but I mean, just the ability to meet expectations you know, in a way that like,
so give me, is someone riding somebody else and be like, hey, you got to get this stuff done, and someone's like, oh, I don't have enough people to work with, or it's too much work. Like, what would this scenario be?
So now, you know, like if you're, you know, cities are service oriented. So like, you know, where you're seeing your most benefit is with your public works division.
Okay.
You know, they're the ones plowing your streets. They're the ones, you know, they're the ones that you take for granted because you can turn the faucet on and flush your toilet and have street lights and you know, there's a lot of bang for your buck with your public works and with police and fire. You know, I'm in community development, which is kind of more of the, you know, bringing in new development and getting and working with existing developers and business owners.
Okay.
What was your question? I'm sorry.
Just what would be the scenario in which the public, the government workers are like, hey, this is kind of a bummer?
Well, again, you know, with morale, morale, I would say even in the private sector, you know, it's important to keep morale up.
Okay.
And, you know, you need to be given the right tools to do your job.
Okay.
You need to be given, not given, you need to have a political environment where you feel like they're committed, where the board or the council, the board is committed to achieving the goals that your department is there to do.
Okay.
Now with public works, it would be, you know, to make sure that our budget allows for us to fix a certain amount of streets every year, so that we don't fall behind on our deteriorating roads.
Yeah.
If they're not committed to that, that's gonna affect the morale of the guys whose job it is. They're gonna get the phone calls from the residents. Why isn't this done? Why isn't that done? Well, you're not gonna just you're not just gonna throw somebody under the bus or.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes there's real budgetary concerns and reasons for it, and you do what you can. So sometimes, you know, the economy really affects how well your city runs.
Interesting. Okay.
And then you have to have a good mix of certain types of development in town to bring in sales tax revenue and then, you know, but for my department, it's usually lack of staffing.
Okay.
You know, you know, everybody could justify bringing on more people. You know, when you're in a service-oriented business, because you're trying to meet the expectations of your customer. In this case, you know, the taxpayers. So, you know, there's a lot of things that we want to see done that really helps quality of life of people. Even people don't realize it. I mean, you know, people. I mean, I don't ever remember sitting at home going, boy, you know, such a good quality of life having the city of St. Charles, you know, providing me these government services. People don't think that way, but I know, because I'm working behind the scenes, where it affects you. I just know. Yeah. And so, and if you take your job seriously at all and you care about what you're doing, you want to see you having the right number of people doing it with you, so that you can take on. Because you have to prioritize. Some stuff's going to fall by the wayside. Yeah. And if you care about your job, you don't want to see too much stuff fall by the wayside. You want to be able to implement everything that you have in, you know, that government is supposed to offer to help to kind of help improve quality of life of your residents. I mean, really, that's kind of what it boils down to. So
I look at things very simplistically, because I see the USPS, the post office, they're the only government agency that runs at a profit, but you technically can't run at a profit. So they had to fund their pensions, I think, 40 or 50 years in advance. That's why when you look at
they don't run on a profit. They run on a loss everywhere. Like $4 billion.
But that's because they're funding, or how they have to fund their pension. Their business themselves, if they were working like a regular business and they funded everything like a regular business does, they would be the only government agency that can run on its own, because it's
a revenue generating thing.
Yes. So, and when I look at things, I feel like a lot of the stuff being done, like the TSA, it's not, you can just, most of the time I'd say we travel a fair amount. If you just had all the lanes open, it would work smoothly. Yeah. Yes, some people would be sitting there for half an hour, maybe an hour.
You could privatize the TSA. There's a lot of things you could privatize that lend themselves to it.
But even not necessarily privatizing it, but just it's not a. It doesn't need to be a wild idea or improvements. A lot of the stuff seems fairly simple. I think the Chicago tolls, I think we sold those to somebody and they
the Skyway Bridge or something. Yeah, that was a racket. Yeah. I don't know a lot about that, but I know it was like billions of dollars, or like the parking meters that daily sold. Meters, it was just it was crazy. It was crazy. Yeah, there are some things that government does really well, and there are some things that government doesn't do.
Would you say the stuff that either St. Charles or the other governments do, is it usually budget constraints? Is it because people are working at like a 70 and if they got to a 90, like things would be tremendously improved? Like what would you say?
So I think that what really kind of, to me, in my experience, has been what really kind of sets the tone for an effective local government is the leadership.
Okay.
If the person that's at the helm has strong character and is willing to make the tough decisions and to require of their staff that things get done in a way that isn't always popular, but it's effective.
Mm-hmm. What does that mean as in not popular but effective?
So
like working 40 hours? Or
no, I don't even think it's so much that. It's like, if there's a decision that needs to be made for something to happen that's going to benefit the community, but there's this due process that's arduous, repetitive, redundant. If you can get from A to Z in a creative way, and I'm not suggesting that anybody circumvent requirements or like that, but if there are ways to streamline government, like this Doge thing has got me really, really, really excited. If there was like a Doge for local government, that'd be great. I'm not saying that local government's fat. It's just that, it's like, government it needs to be effective, but it needs to, if you have a really strong leader, like a really strong village president or city manager who's willing to just say, hey, look, it sounds like you guys are having trouble making a decision and how to get from A to Z with this developer or with this budgeting issue or with this code violation or whatever it is. So we're not gonna go around in circles on this anymore. Here's the decision. So, implement it today and move on to the next issue.
So is it because you have to go through so many meetings? The meetings only last this long. They're once a week. What's the process?
All that. Okay. Because there's so much like not due process, but so much like
just the steps are lengthy.
Just the diligence and the meeting schedules and but sometimes I think to me that's why you have a leader in a group of people working and that's the thing. Not every department is producing something.
Gotcha.
You know what I mean? It's like Public Works is producing something. They're required to produce a program where a street gets repaired. Community development isn't. I'm in community development. We're not really tasked with producing anything. I mean, we're working with developers who are producing things. Okay. We're just helping them get through the process to meet the city requirements for the and our concern is that our residents, that the safety and welfare and benefit of the community is represented in that process.
Gotcha.
Now, but we're not producing anything. Sometimes you're not. There's going to be issues that create a bit of a bottleneck, to use the term that you had mentioned. And I like when things get bottlenecked, I like when somebody just comes in and goes, hey, I'm going to buy this problem from you and I'm going to make a decision right now. Boom, done. Like it or not.
So
because then I can say, okay, I'm done with this. Now I can move on to the next thing because there's so much work to do.
And is that usually like a 5-cent problem and like it's just every little thing takes so many steps? what's usually?
I think it's a difference in opinion.
Okay.
It's a difference in who's paying for it.
Okay.
Who's interested is best interested is in. And it's also a difference in essentially opinion of how big of a problem is it really? Is this a perceived problem, or do we really have a problem?
Yeah.
A lot of times people get emotionally involved in the decisions they're making when it comes to work, whether you're in government or you're flying an airplane.
Yeah.
You don't want to always have, sometimes you want to kind of have somebody just go, hey, look, I'm going to make this easy on you.
Yeah.
I'm your leader, and this issue is causing problems. We're going to solve that problem right now.
Yeah. So there's a book, and I always will talk about whatever it is, the book I'm reading at the time, because I'm like, oh, this book is solve the world's problems, but it's called How Big Things Get Done, and more or less making things more modular, repeatable, so you don't have to create a specific scenario each time. And one of the things it talked about, now I'm going to get the country wrong, but I think it was China. They got 99% of the way done on the nuclear power plant, billions of dollars, but they couldn't get that extra 1%. And there goes, we'll say $15 billion or whatever it was. Mm-hmm. So what they decided to do was make more modular nuclear power plants, much smaller. But if you wanted to add on to it, you could absolutely add on to it. And they didn't have things wrong for it. So they are able to more or less just lather, rinse, repeat the project. Mm-hmm. When it comes to the cities projects, is everything just a different project that you have to go through a bunch of different stuff? Like you said, who's paying for it, who's it's advantageous for? Yeah. It just seems like every process seems like it's kind of new. You have to jump through more or less the same hurdles, but they're a little bit different.
Yeah. So they're all different. They all have to meet kind of the same basic requirements with zoning and so forth. And and to be clear, we have good leadership in St. Charles. It's a great city, and I really am fortunate to be working there. I'm just talking about over this 18 years that I've been in municipal government.
Gotcha.
You see these different regimes, I'll call it, come in.
Yeah.
Where this is different schools of thought as far as how you handle political things and how you handle staffing and how you handle budgeting. Mm-hmm. And it's like there really isn't any right way. Yeah. To do everything. Yeah. But you need somebody who's gonna have a strong sense of direction. Okay. And who can go and who can make smart decisions. Others, I'm not a good manager. I probably wouldn't be a good leader. I just don't, because you have to, that's why they have 4-year degrees to do such type of things. But I know the difference of what it does to morale if you don't have somebody who really is good at kind of cutting through all the bullshit, and that's when I'm happiest when I'm working with people who are just good decision makers. They're confident in their ability to make decisions. They do it, and they do it in a way that ultimately seems to benefit everybody. And sometimes you might have to make a concession. Okay. And sometimes you might even get more than you require, than the bare minimum. Because sometimes you want more than the bare minimum. You want exceed expectations and requirements. Yeah. But the point is that you have that strong leadership. It really helps you get to the morale, and it really helps the city or the company, whatever it may be, function well. But with project with the city, they any kind of development projects is going to have to meet a lot of the basic outline for how you do a project. Yeah. Depending on what type of project it is, where it's at. Okay. And how it's funded. The city. From what I understand, I was reading this on the website. I've only been there a year, but I know they have a very strong economic development department, and they've got there's incentives where the city actually helps small business owners. And can assist with them in financial ways, tax. That's great. Tax rebates, different things, placement type incentives. It's very cool that they have that kind of stuff. I was reading about the other day.
I love that.
Yeah.
We'll fix small government in part 2, but
and that's the other thing that I find really, really helpful is that it's so easy to get bogged down in the big picture.
Yeah.
But if you stay focused on like your immediate sphere of influence, it seems to really kind of help you like stay happier, because that's where you have more effect.
Right.
You have more ability to make a difference, or even to understand it.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like I can understand what's going on in St. Charles.
Yeah. For sure.
And what's going on with King County, or it's like that's about as big as I get as King County. I mean to even get to the state government level, things are like just crazy. But I mean, so, and then like your school district, we were talking about the curricula earlier. It's it's like you want to get involved at your local level. It's something that I think about all the time. I think about maybe doing that.
What is getting involved?
Yeah, maybe get on my local school board, or my local county board, or I mean that's pretty lofty goals for someone like me who's just a boat rower. I'm
a boat rower.
Yeah,
Did you used to row boats?
Well, for somebody who works in government, like on a real basic level. I'm not even middle management.
Gotcha.
But as far as like because to me everything's about my children's future. It just is.
Right.
The reason why I get concerned or worked up or motivated or worried is because I know how I'm going to handle it. I'm going to be just fine.
Right.
But I mean, I've got two 10-year-olds who things look very daunting.
Yeah.
And I want to have a really positive look on it, and I think that starts at your local level.
Absolutely.
Because I don't think anybody's going to change what's going on.
That takes
at
years
the federal
and years
level.
Of preparation.
I guess all you can do is vote, right?
Yep,
yeah.
Yep.
So.
But we'll end with the last 2 questions
Sure.
that everyone gets. What's your definition of health? Not necessarily the dictionary definition, but what is health to you?
Definition of health.
Yeah.
Well, I think for what helps me to stay feeling healthy and to being healthy, I think my definition of health is commitment to doing what makes you healthy.
Love that. Yeah. And then what's something from your life that you think people listening to the podcast would be able to take away as a positive?
Something from my life? So almost like a COT.
Yeah.
Huh, yeah. This is
on you.
Like an F3 thing, a COT. Well, I didn't prepare one. Usually if you're queuing, you at least have, usually you can lay in bed at night and think about it the next morning.
Yep.
I tell you, I think right now what comes to mind, because what I'm thinking about as a result of talking to you, somebody who I've met from F3, is I think it helps me to turn to people who I know are uplifting, and to engage those people and surround yourself and to go to and turn to and listen to people who have shown you that they're going to be positive in your life. People who are going to steer you away from the negativity and steer you more towards thinking more positively and healthy and spiritually and all of that. And I've been doing more of that since I've met guys like you through F3, and since I've started on my kind of change in lifestyle. It's like I recognize that more, that there are people like, boy, that guy, man. I'm like, I feel invigorated when I'm around that person, or that that coworker, or this, or when I'm listening to this person on the radio, or whatever it is, because if you think about it, there's it's funny. Somebody said one time that with social media, especially, you gravitate towards the things that enrage you. You know what I mean? It's like, and I was doing that for a long time, where it was like I was listening to people that were choosing topics that were enraging, horrible topics. So I hope today we didn't do much of that. But I tried to stay positive. Yeah. But it's like, but when I'm thinking of just F3, for example, because say that's where you and I met. There are most of the guys, if not all the guys there, are they're people who when I spend time with or hang out with or work out with, you walk away going, well, you know what? That was a good, positive experience.
Yes.
And I was redirected in my thinking and my activities to be constructive and to be good.
Yeah.
And that's to me invaluable. So recognizing it first of all, and then living that through is important.
Well, there it is. Thanks so much for coming on the podcast.
All right, man. Good to see you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
This episode is brought to you by Vital Athlete. And listen up, this could make a real difference. I've been using Vital Athlete Freeze Roll-On for the last 6 months. I stopped using regular painkillers about 10 years ago because of the negative side effects on your liver and kidneys. Vital Athletes understands this. They've created a CBD roll-on specifically for pain and injury relief. Their Freeze Roll-On gives you fast-acting relief right where you need it, so you can keep going. If you care about getting the most out of every workout, then Vital Athlete is for you.